Nancy Loedy, it is about time that we got my listeners to meet you on Coffee and Crystals. How are you doing this morning?
I'm so good.
Well, wait,
I know I've
excuse
been
me.
waiting.
You're in Boston. It's not the morning like it is here.
I still kind of feel like it's morning though. Yeah.
Yeah, the case of the Mondays over there.
I mean, Boston is a workaholic city, so it's kind of like that constantly.
I was in a yoga class yesterday, and the teacher was like teaching a very slow yin restorative type class. Love her. But she made a comment at the beginning. She's like, okay, LA, I know you hate to slow down. This is the type of city that doesn't slow down. I'm like, yep, I'm right there.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to have my listeners hear a little bit about your background. We're going to go over a lot of things today. I am excited for my listeners to learn from you, what you do. So I'd like to hear from your words a little bit about your background. I mean, there's a lot to unload here. So I'd love to hear about your
Right.
music, your yoga practice, brain integration, all the things. So
Right.
who are you, Nancy Lodi?
Who is Nancy?
Who is Nancy?
Yeah, it's a long thing. Everybody has like really long journeys in their lives and they go like from here to there and sometimes it doesn't look like it's a path. And I remember when you and I met with Marianne Wells doing yoga, I think one day we were talking about how when you're walking through life, it just looks like trees and forest and you don't know where you're going. But when you look back at your past, you see how it was a path and how each
Yeah.
part kind of led to each other thing. And certainly my story is like that too, I think, like most people. Um, I was a musician. I am a musician, but I did it professionally for a really long time. I have a degree in jazz and commercial music and saxophone performance.
So
Um, but part of the reason I have that degree is because I wasn't good at other subjects. Like in school, I got really poor grades, specifically in areas where I had to read and write because my brain wasn't working, and I got better grades in math and I got excellent grades in music. And so that's what we did. You just did what you could do,
yeah,
and
I
music
think
was what
I
I could
remember
do.
this might have been one of our first deeper conversations is when you told me that story. I could resonate with that because in school I didn't get good grades in anything either, but I was first chair music. I played the clarinet, but I was
Ah,
always playing first chair music in last chair because of behavior. I was always the class clown getting in trouble,
oh, wow.
but I was the best. I mean, how would you say in music the best? But I was playing first chair and I loved it.
Right.
It came easily to me.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, music is such an amazing friend, I feel like, and actually I on a personal level, like when I had always grown up playing music and singing and playing piano with my family and certainly singing in churches. But then when I got a
Same.
degree in music, they stopped doing that. It was really sad. They kind
Interesting.
of like set me as like professional musician. Now Nancy plays happy birthday at the parties, or, Nancy plays at
With a
grandpa's
wig.
funeral. And it actually was really kind of harmful to me because I feel like music should be for everybody, that was something we do together. So I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that, but I did and do enjoy my music career. So,
Okay.
and,
And then
and
brain
sound in
integration.
general, I was going to say, like, it just, when you think about music, if you really think about what it is, it really ties into quantum healing based on vibration. And
Yeah.
I think that's where it kind of overlaps for me. Yeah. Those vibrations, music vibrations, are very specific. And in the Greeks actually had a doctrine of affections that stated that music goes through your body and the vibrations change the blood flow to certain organs, and that's what produces emotions.
Cool.
Isn't that interesting? So that's called the
Yeah.
doctrine of affections. And certainly now that I work in a quantum field, um, we see that all the time. It's all vibrations.
Well, I know
Are
in
they
Marianne
co
Wells' teachings of the chakras, and all the information on the different in the guidebook, or the workbook, she would talk about what sound correlated with with each chakra. So I think where I
Mhm.
met you in the art of Boon, where I really started learning and in a yoga way, mantra,
Mhm.
chanting. Um, I always called it the wrong name, kirtan. I was calling it crouton, and that's when I
I
first
like
like
that.
started, going to that at the Art of Boone, North Carolina, Art of
Right.
Living.
Art of Living in Boone. Yeah.
So
That's a
yeah, you
gorgeous
got me back
campus.
into like music as part of my yoga practice.
Mhm.
You knew I was that your hype girl. Got me back into that.
Yeah. It's cool too because when you think about, you just got me thinking about music vibrations, sound vibrations, like there are consonant sounds and dissonant sounds. And that's how we can think about health too. Like when things are consonant and lined up, then you have health. And when they're dissonant and combative, then you have dis-ease. And so it really is a metaphor. Music is actually a metaphor for health. I really believe that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that in your background. So back up a
Yeah.
little bit. You said your brain wasn't really working. So how did you come across practicing brain integration? We'll get into more about what exactly it is, but tell me a little bit about your story and the practice and really yoga too. I'd love to hear about how you got into yoga.
Well, I was teaching music and playing a lot. I was in a lot of bands. I was teaching music at a private school here in Hingham, and I had 15 private students after school a week, which is a lot. And then I was in like six bands.
Why
And
did you
so
have
I
time
was,
to do this? This is so Nancy of you.
right? It's so pitta of me to
Yeah.
be constantly going
I've
everywhere.
had a lot of pittas on the show lately. I gotta switch it up.
So I was, but in between all that, because I was such a workaholic, I had really bad migraine headaches, and um, I just recognized I started going to yoga because we were on the road as a band. And when we would stop at a rest stop, the people I was in the band with would stretch. And that was my first introduction to yoga. And when we came back to Boston during the week, they introduced me to hot yoga, Bikram, actually. And,
I've never.
like getting all that sweat out and like being completely filled with brand new oxygen, you feel like $1 million when you get out of hot yoga. And so that's how I got hooked on it, was the feeling of like, wow, this is what it feels like to be alive. And then I was doing more and more yoga just to combat the fact that I was a workaholic. And then I just realized one day, like, if I taught yoga instead of music, I would have a lot more freedom, and I could still play all the music I wanted, but it wouldn't be as it was a little soul sucking to teach to teach for the private schools, because you don't get to do what you want to do, and there's a lot of administration. So anyway, um, I did a lot of yoga, and then that's when I signed up for Marianne Wells' 200-hour yoga training, which was at Samasati, which was in Puerto Viejo at the time. That's
Yeah,
where she did that training, which was beautiful. So I went to Costa Rica, got
I've
trained in
never been
yoga,
to
and
Fancy.
then pretty much as soon as I came back, what happened was I was on my way to teach my first yoga class, and I was in a car accident, and then another car accident on the way to the hospital. So
Oh
I
my
was in
gosh, I
two
didn't
car
know you were on your
accidents
way
in
to
one
teach
hour.
yoga.
Yeah, that's what really
Wow.
happened. That's the real story.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that changed things.
That changed everything because I was hit in the chest with the steering column, and I couldn't really play music, which was my first career, and I couldn't teach yoga, which was my second career. So everything halted. And my yoga teacher in town was a Reiki master, and she did some Reiki on me. And she said, Nancy, you're changing from being a workaholic to being more mindful. And the universe is not going to let you have your feet in both sides. You have to decide. You have to decide what you want to do. So even though
Oh,
it was
those
really
defining moments. Dun,
painful,
dun, dun.
I know it was like the universe kind of slapped me upside the head, twice, like one, two.
Yeah, the pitta in you is like, oh, she didn't feel it. Let's do it again.
Oh my God. I know. I love it when Marianne talks about surviving your dosha. That made so much sense to me finally.
it's making so much sense to me that I'm like, even my listeners that are learning what pitta means, like, I definitely feel like I have a lot of pitta in me. I had Ron and then I had Nick and now I have you. And I'm like, okay, you guys, you understand pitta? After this episode, you're going to really understand what pitta means. And we're going to introduce you to some vatas and some kappas going forward too. So we
Well,
can really
it's so amazing
get
the
the
way that
learning.
Marianne, right, where Marianne was like, it's not your superpower. Because I feel like as pittas, we feel like I'm fire, I'm everything. That's my superpower. Watch me do it. And Marianne just kind of looked me in the eyes and she was like, it's not your superpower. It will kill you,
She's
it
like,
will burn you.
oh
And so I loved it when she said, you have to, she just looked at me and she said, you have to survive your dosha. And that made the most sense to me of anything I've ever heard in my life.
yeah, I like that. I don't feel like I have heard her say that, but that's a tweetable moment.
Yeah.
Every day, one foot in front of the other, you got to survive your dosha.
You have to survive your dosha. And in order to do that, you cultivate the practices of the other doshas, right?
Right.
So my practices must be kapha, even though they're painfully slow, painfully non moving, painfully quiet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Where we met was the same where my listeners just met Nick last week. We
Right.
talked about Ayurvedic practices, restorative yoga. We really went down some really great rabbit holes about healing. So we heard about Boone, and this is also where we met. And from that, I became your part-time hype girl and doing your marketing for you and your business.
Well, I have a private business practicing a type of specialized kinesiology that is called brain integration. And I fell in love with it when, after those car accidents, I prayed and spirit told me, do this thing. And there was a woman in my town that was doing it. And she actually, I thought it was really fake, actually, because she told me that I didn't have to live with the brain I had and that it could be different without any exercises. And I just thought that was the most fake thing. And I had all those sayings that people say to me now, which is like, if it's so cool, how come everybody doesn't know about it? And if this was a real thing, then it would be everywhere. And I really had a closed mind to it until I had these two accidents. And then she just didn't take no for an answer. She was like, lay down. And in a short amount of time, it is so remarkable. But what really happened is my brain went from non functioning to functioning. And I didn't do any exercises at all. She rewired it with
So
her
great.
hands. And so now I have this brain that like remembers what it reads. I got rid of all my allergies. I sleep through the night, which I never ever did as a child. As a child, my sleep was so poor. And now I have this brain that eats up a to-do list and is relaxed and can operate multiple businesses and not really feel stressed. And it's absolutely remarkable, the brain that I have now.
So you might have said this, but where did you meet Susan? How did she know to come to you and tell you that your brain isn't working and it can?
Well, this was actually a different practitioner named Elizabeth,
Okay.
and she was living in Jamaica Plain. And we met through mutual acquaintances. And she was telling me about this thing she was studying, which is called cross-analogy brain integration. And I thought it was fake. And then I had these two accidents, and she just said, you need this now. And then my brain was starting to change, and I just was praying, and spirit said, do this for other people. So that was when I met Susan. I went to Colorado to get trained in brain integration. And I'm from Colorado, so that was particularly serendipitous because I got to go home and see my
Yeah,
dad
this
and my
is very
brother,
for you.
which was very cool. And so Susan was teaching in Boulder at the time. And I studied pre-bit, which is the first class. And then I did brain integration. And then I did the third class. And I just knew it was for me. I started working on people in a one-on-one situation and watching their brains change. And the technique really works. If you don't have to know a lot, you don't have to do a lot. In fact, it's best if you don't really think and you let the muscle testing guide you. And it's remarkable. Now it's 13 years later. This is my 13th year. And when you and I met, it was totally out of hand because because as an entrepreneur, you're expected to be everything at once, right?
Hmm.
The booking
Tell
agent,
me about
if
it.
right, you're like, you're booking your clients or your gigs, you're the financial officer, you are somehow supposed to be the business officer. And then you're supposed to, in these healing arts, have this really gentle side that helps people. And it's just impossible to do. It's impossible to do all the parts. And so when you and I met, I recognized right inside of you that you had this total spark for networking people and bringing people together. And I just thought I need that on my team. So that's when I was like, Kadie, you're mine now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been like 4 years. I think when I was like gonna put it on my LinkedIn, it's like on my to-do list the next couple of weeks. I was like, I feel like people need to know that what I'm doing, like this marketing work. But I think for you, because I've been able to have brain integration just this last spring in Boston, and I was really having trouble with my workouts and feeling motivated, I guess earlier, like the slow kapha is really what I was
Right.
like, why do I have no energy? Why do I feel like when I do work out, my body, it's almost like my body wasn't coming along the journey with me. And that was something
Mm-hmm.
out of brain integration that you picked up. You're like, are you feeling like when you work out? I didn't even tell you this. You're like, are you
Mm.
feeling like when you work out, your brain isn't, aligned with your physical body? Am I explaining this right?
Yeah, exactly. So do you want to know how I do that?
How?
So you have the two hemispheres of the brain, right? One does logic, which is like basic math and like how things go in order. And then you have the gestalt part. It's called gestalt, which is a German word for the big picture. So you have the little details and the big picture. In between that is a bridge that connects them. And that's why humans are so amazing, because we can extrapolate from big things to little, and we can go the other way and take little things and make them big. And that all happens through this beautiful bridge. The bridge is called the corpus callosum. Half of that bridge, though, runs your body. And so it's called the neuromuscular level. So from the brain to the body. And I noticed in you that it was diminished. It wasn't working at its full capacity. So I could guess that that's how you felt. And
Yeah.
that's how it happens with all my clients. Based on the wire I see that isn't functioning, I can guess how it impacts their life. And so sometimes people are like, you read my mind. That's not what's happening at all. I'm reading a wire and guessing, and it turns out to be correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's connecting. That's one of my favorite things about doing marketing for you is when you give me those like brain graphs where I'm like learning anatomy about the brain. I feel like you get a
Yep.
lot of engagement off of those as well because I think too, I've been working with you now for 4 years, as we just said, but the listeners are probably like, huh? Might have to like rewind and re-listen to her say that. But it's been
Yeah.
really cool learning all these tips and tricks from you. So I was thinking I'm going
Oh,
to put a link in the show notes for Nancyology so people can watch that video and have a little bit better of an idea. So I thought maybe since we're going to watch that video, could you explain some of those techniques that you go over in that YouTube video of how people can do brain integration on themselves if they're curious?
yes, absolutely. I think it requires a little bit of background. The truth is, brain integration is a technique. It's done by a practitioner. There are no exercises. And
Okay.
that is the absolute most important thing for everybody to understand, because everybody wants a brain that works faster. But most of the things you see out there are based on exercises you do to get it to work faster. And that
Okay.
is not what is happening here. This is specialized kinesiology that uses gentle touch to literally rewire the brain, and then it's faster. So there are no exercises. And
Okay.
so it's completely remarkable, because people will say, well, what about, brain gym or meditation? And I'm like, those are great if you have a zillion hours,
Right.
but you don't. I know you don't, because you're a modern individual like me. And so brain integration is a miracle, to go to a practitioner for, to rewire the brain fully takes 12 hours of treatment. So whether you do it over the course of 2 days or over the course of 6 months, it doesn't matter so much, but the practitioner changes the wires. Now, it's true that we don't have that many practitioners, and it may be hard for people to get to. So spirit kind of channeled to me some ways that people could do it for themselves. And that's what Nanciology is.
Okay.
So Nanciology is like 6 balances. When we change the brain, we call them balances. And these 6 are really cool because they're really designed to up level your quality of life, like take it
Yeah.
to a new place. And so the 6 things that we change with Nanciology are, first of all, the neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are hormones that are happening in your head. And so they're running everything that happens to you. Like norepinephrine is the neurotransmitter that allows you to focus when you want to get something
Okay.
done. Or GABA is the neurotransmitter that helps you fall asleep, right? Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that makes you feel rewarded, and we all want to harness that. But when they're out of balance, you get this really odd experience that doesn't line up. So that's the first thing you change. Then the next 2 balances are for glands. The glands secrete those hormones. So going one step back in the line. So the glands that are up in your head, and then the glands that are in the rest of the body. And I think for modern humans, probably the adrenals and thyroid are really most of the concern, especially because everybody's adrenals are a little tapped from being such a productive society. Like we
Yeah.
really don't take downtime. So once you balance the glands, then the chemicals are even more correct.
Okay.
So then the next 3 are energetic. There's one balance for your chakra system, which is so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 balances for the central vessel and governing vessel. These are acupressure meridians, and they kind of hold the body in an egg shape. One comes up your front and one comes up your back. And so when you balance these 2, you're balancing how you feel about yourself and what you show to the world. So when you do all 6, you're kind of like set up to walk into your world from a place that is already mindfully present. And that's the miracle of it. You don't have to be like half aware. You don't have to be half groggy. You don't have to be half full of energy. You can just be flat and move from there. And there are no exercises and no supplements.
Okay. All right. So many questions from that, but I'm like my first, I guess, more question now is if you've only done like 2 workings on me and you said it takes 12, it's like I got 10 more to go.
Yeah, it's a lot, but when you think about it that way, but the practitioner goes through the brain like painstakingly for the practitioner, each wire at a time, right? And so that seems like it takes a little time, right? It's not just one and done. But the truth is, comparatively to everything else that's out there, it's minuscule. It's
Oh yeah,
tiny.
totally. I was just kind of thinking like I gotta get on a plane to Boston here.
Well, but isn't it interesting that even with those tiny amounts, you changed?
Hmm.
That's the miracle. So sometimes people don't come back, right? Sometimes they have a circumstance that they don't come back to my office, but they changed anyway.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, so you were saying there was no movement, but just like the yogi and me, when you were talking through the different, the chakras and the adrenals, I couldn't help but think of just yoga poses that are good for those areas of the body. So since we are both
Mm-hmm.
yogis, anytime I teach class, like when I was teaching that at that retreat in Mexico, I feel like any pose that I teach that reminds me of you, I like throw in a little marketing about fit integration. I don't mean to, but it just like kind of comes out, especially with cat cow. Just
Yeah.
talking about, waking up the spine and
Yeah.
um, breathing into your brain. So what are some other yoga poses that, kind of just get you thinking about the brain,
Mm.
good for the
This is a
brain?
great question. This is a great question. Let me think. Yoga poses that get me
You
thinking
said
about the.
thyroid, so then I was like, okay, fish pose. I don't know, this is where my brain
Yeah,
goes.
right. Stuff that opens up a particular area. I think that when it really comes to yoga and the brain, I'm inclined to talk really about the lymph
Okay.
because your lymph system is
Obsessed
kind of
with
like the
poses on the
fluid.
lymph nodes right now. Sorry, go ahead.
What's that? Say that again.
I'm just kind of obsessed with lymph node poses right now, like laying on your belly and then twisting over and
Yes.
how tight I am under the armpit. I was like, that's a little scary. I got to work that out.
Right. I think the reason why I'm tempted to talk about that in terms of yoga and the brain is because your body and your brain work better when they're clean. And that's really the only marker. And so, if sadly, if they're not as clean, you have to use more supplements to feel what you want to feel,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can actually cut it off, like cut the train off at the track and just say, wait a minute, let's clean it. And then it feels better. And then rely less on supplements and pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
So the lymph
Help
system, like,
people listening that little tip.
yeah. So the lymph system is so important. And that's why people say drink so much water because we're
I say
flushing
stay
out
hydrated on
toxins,
here.
right? Because we're flushing out toxins. But then the other part of it is the actual lymph. And the lymph is like your waste system. But it's really important because when the lymph is kind of isolating those pathogens like viruses and bacteria, they get stuck in your little lymph nodes. And then your T cells, which come from the thymus, are trained to find them and eradicate them. So you are healthy. But the lymph doesn't have its own pump. So it kind of gets sludgier and sludgier and sludgier over time if you don't move it. And the thing that yoga does is move your lymph, right?
I love that.
So like the lymph doesn't have its own
Good
pump, but
information.
but there's all these areas in the body when we use yoga where we're squishing lymph nodes. Like if you take just your knee into your chest, you're squishing all these lymph nodes that are in your pelvis, you know? And when you're twisting, you're actually moving a portion of the lymph that's right here, which is called
Give me all cool.
cisterna and so this is like a cistern, like a bowl that holds your lymph and should kind of move it back up to the upper parts of the area. But we don't have a system that moves it. That's why yoga is so beautiful. Because when you breathe and you move your rib cage, you are moving the lymph. When you compress joints, you are moving the lymph. And yoga is all about compressing it and then letting it open, right? Squishing out the bad
Yeah.
stuff and then letting in the good blood that is fully oxygenated. Oxygenated. What's that word? Don't
Word.
know that word. Is that a word? Full of
Oxygenation.
oxygen.
I used to know this word when I worked for 2 times U in selling compression, but
Oxygenated. That must be it.
oh, now I don't know. Moving.
So like that oxygen, like coming in, that's that beautiful effervescent feeling you feel when you let go of a yoga pose and suddenly all the blood comes in. And so it can clean out the junk. So yoga is there's a reason why it's thousands of years old for health. And these are the reasons.
Yeah. Cool. Well, speaking of health, one of my best friend's moms was just diagnosed with Parkinson's. So I just wanted to
Mm.
see your thoughts on disease that the brain is degenerated. Just what are some of your thoughts on some of these? Also, you mentioned migraines. I have a couple friends in my circle that struggle with intense migraines. It just like takes them out for half a day. So have you had any clients that brain integration has helped with these things, or, what are some of your tips? Fanciology.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to brain health, the thing we have to watch out for is sugar. The thing we have to watch out for is sugar. And when you start to understand the mechanism for disease, uh, what you really need to know is that there are only two causative factors of disease, and that's inflammation and acidity. So the more inflammation you have in your body, the more disease you will create. And the more acidic your body, the more disease you will have. So all of health is based around these two issues.
Interesting.
And sugar is inflammatory like crazy. Sugar is not your friend. I know you love it just like I do, everybody. But it is just, I personally think, the worst thing for health. That doesn't mean I don't have any sugar or that I don't crave it. But I understand the
Do you have
mechanism.
sugar? Where is your sugar coming from, though? Like fruit?
Fruit for me is totally fine.
Yeah, because it's a different type of sugar.
Yeah, this gets into a little bit of a gray area. If you, um, this is a little bit hard to talk about, so I'm going to maybe do the gems quickly if we
Yeah.
can. Sugar grows a fungus called Candida.
Okay.
Candida is naturally in your intestine, but it overgrows if you have a sugary diet or antibiotics or both. And in the United States, we have both.
Right.
So um, that is going to cause an inflammatory state all over. And when the sugar grows, the fungus, it's going to affect the entire body. So part of what happens is the intestinal lining gets a hole in it, and that's called leaky gut. The reason why that happens is the candida has a shell on it and a spike, and it literally burrows through your intestinal wall. That's true.
Oh my gosh, when
So
I first
that's
started doing social media for you, you would send me all these facts and these things to post, and I was like, ah!
it
you
gets a
know,
little scary, right?
it is scary. So that's
Um,
why you had me on your team to like send the message a little bit more fluffy, but it was like sugar help. But yes, it is kind of scary when you really think about what it's doing to our bodies.
yeah. So that's called leaky gut. And the problem, really working towards the diagnoses you just mentioned, is that when the lining of the intestine becomes perforated, the blood brain barrier mimics that and it gets gauzy. And so any number of things can go up into the brain that should not be there. And that's why brains are deteriorating.
Okay.
So we should understand that Alzheimer's will be renamed diabetes type 3. And what that really is telling you is that it's all based on sugar. And we can stop that by addressing the gut. You can absolutely stop that by addressing the gut. I'm not a doctor. I don't
Different.
claim to be a doctor. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a good point that I covered up. She's not a doctor. She doesn't claim to be a doctor.
No, I'm not a doctor, but you can take your health into your own hands and understand the components for sure. Right.
Yeah.
And you
And
need
I
to
was
do your
saying
own research.
the gut is your second brain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The gut is the second brain because of this gut brain axis. And also, you got some hormones that are produced in the gut and not really anywhere else, like serotonin. Serotonin makes you feel satisfied, and so it's like that food, I feel satisfied, or I just had something. And also in my life, I feel satisfied. It's
Hmm.
both, right?
Yeah.
Each person is so multidimensional. There's not just a physical thing, there is the metaphysical component of that same thing.
Mind
I
blowing.
know it's a big deal.
What are some supplements? I know that, I got on a couple supplements after just working with you and seeing what you take and trying it out and it working for me. Hemp for period cramps. That would be when I would take like Tylenol, Advil, anything because I was in so much pain. I also started taking a probiotic, some adaptogens. I mean, I take a lot, but I feel like you really kind of got me into this exploration. So I know everybody is different. But yeah, what are some supplements that you feel are protecting the gut, the brain?
Okay, so let's talk about CBD first. CBD
Okay.
is so great, so wonderful. I love it. We're so lucky that now it's available to the masses as a medicine. That
Yeah.
part is just awesome. The plant itself can kill cancer. I think that part's really great. It can heal the lining of your intestines, what we were just talking about. And it kills off candida, which is the
Okay.
cause of those two things. Um, but it really provides this incredible kind of like motor oil in between everything. And so when you get this viscosity, your synapses fire better, your muscles fire better, your elimination pathways work better, so you have less inflammation and less pain.
Oh my God.
And each strain and the way it's put together is for totally different things. Like there are CBD products that legit will help you sleep. There are other ones that legitimately will wake you up, just like nootropics. And I feel like now that it's available, it's amazing. I hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, my mom is, getting up there in age. I gave her some CBD and now she walks around without pain. Or my
Yeah,
dog is like that
that
too.
is
And
amazing.
so when we take it as, middle-aged modern people, you don't normally notice all that crazy stuff, like, but it is working for you underneath there. And so we're really looking at the difference between like Western medicine, which is fix a problem, and Eastern medicine, which is preemptively treat it. And we want to be there. I mean, that's just the best place to be. So I love CBD. I love CBD products. You have to do your own research. And you should be aware of a lot of different components. But in general, that's an amazing like gem that we have for health.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that the same as like hemp? That's different.
uh, no, it is the same as hemp. Hemp
Okay.
oil will have CBD in it, but most likely also has a very small amount of THC. THC is the psychoactive component.
Got it.
And what scientists found is that the product works better when you have the full plant involved. And that is called the entourage effect. So they
Okay.
did try to separate them because not everybody wants to feel high or altered. And
Right.
certainly, you wouldn't give that to your grandma. But
In my
but
family, you might, but
or depending on the family, right?
yeah.
Well, when there's a small amount of THC, uh, lower than what would be the legal limit, it just works better. So full spectrum hemp will have that in it. But if you're really concerned, you could get something without THC that has the other components, CBD or CBG or
Right.
CBGA or those little other
Yeah.
things.
Good to know that there's options to have without.
Yeah.
But also, I was really kind of thinking, my listeners know I'm obsessed with acai bowls, and the superfood place across the street, they have hemp granola on top of the bowl. I always get, and I was like, this
Mm-hmm.
is so magical. There's hemp granola.
There's everything. Hemp is such a great thing.
Yeah.
You could use it for fuel to save seas, use it for medicine to help fight disease, use it for food when you're hungry.
Yeah.
Hemp is a
Exactly.
great thing. Yeah. The next product I really love for health, I think with the next one that I would think of is some type of colostrum. Colostrum is normally a bovine product, and it heals the lining of the intestine. If you're a type of person that didn't want to take an animal product, you could use aloe vera juice.
Okay.
Both
I've
of
been
those
looking at
things.
that. TikTok has really gotten me into that product, so I'm glad you brought this up on your own.
So there is a colostrum brand out there called Armra, ARMRA. And the ads I thought were really interesting because there's really young people in the ads, and the whole ad is, you have allergies, you need to fix the lining of your gut. And I was shocked. Finally, modern mainstream people, they know that that's the thing. When your intestinal lining is perforable, stuff gets into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And you have this elevated allergy. And you can fix that. You don't have to be taking allergy meds. You can take colostrum or take aloe vera and heal the lining of the intestine and have fewer allergies. It can happen. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, I growing up in Florida, we had aloe plants, and my grandmother used to put it in like our tea. She used to even put it in our orange juice. Like looking back, I'm
Oh, I
just like,
love it.
she was probably just trying to like get it in our bodies, and we had orange juice all the time. So, but she
Mm-hmm.
would like, I remember her like opening the plant, like putting it in her tuna mixture. She would
Mm-hmm.
like sneak it in our bodies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool
Aloe
that
is
she did that.
amazing for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sunburns. Unfortunately, growing up in Florida, we'd come with sunburns, and she would just like put aloe, like real aloe, all over our bodies.
Mm-hmm. But isn't it cool that the plant like cools and it provides that mucosal layer? And so that's what it's doing in the body too. If you think about inflammation as being hot, it cools that inflammation on the inside.
Very Ayurvedic thinking as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always get bookspo from you. I feel like I even pick books that I feel like could help me with marketing and social media posts for your business. I like some of the brain hacks and like atomic habits and anything that can kind of help me and my businesses as well with habit stacking, time blocking. I don't know. What are some tips You mentioned something about serotonin and how you can get that outside of food. So that was kind of an aha moment, maybe for somebody who overeats. Like, how can you make a to-do list and check something off it? So give us some tips. You always give me some great ones when it comes to just habits and how you can kind of trick your brain or work with your brain.
This is a great question. It's really broad though.
I know, so many
What are
things.
some good tips? Let me think about this. Um, Here's something that everybody should know. Multitasking is not a thing. Multitasking is not a thing. It used to be called a thing, but it's not a thing anymore.
Right.
What it
The
is
more the
now,
better is like always what it was.
right, right. And so now what they realize is it's not multitasking, it's task switching, right? You go from one task to another and maybe you go back. The time in between that it takes you to go back to the original task will eat up your whole day. So now science says don't multitask, have a single pointed focus. So that's just important data to know.
Yeah.
So I think conceptually, you know, do less to achieve more is where we're going.
Yeah.
And the people who listen to you, I imagine, are already into some type of holistic thing, whether it's yoga or meditation. And when the mind is still, it can do way more than when you try to put effort. And I think that that's an important part. So certainly, stress is a driver in all disease. So when we take the time to relax, either after exercising or on purpose during meditation, you make your brain faster. You
Yeah.
don't normally think about that, but it's true.
Just a really, really great thing that you said. So thank you. It's just a good reminder that less really can be more, especially if you're
Mm-hmm.
intentional, with what it is that you're trying to accomplish. It's part of the process to slow down.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And then you can start to work on other things like time blocking. When you time block, you're piggybacking on that concept. You're saying, only for this time, I'm going to focus on this one thing. And because I can be hyper focused and not try to multitask, I can get further.
Yeah. Mm.
So I
Speaking
think
of
that's,
my Monday right now, we're recording on a Monday, so this is helpful for me.
oh, cool.
So much
Yeah.
to do. I'm traveling to Florida this week. Like, if I think about all the things I have to do, that can be overwhelming, but, just really attacking one thing at a time, get more done from it.
Yeah, exactly. And having a time to wait and let the brain do what it does. There's all this subconscious processing that happens. Like they talk about Apple computers and how Steve Jobs, the way that they were envisioned is that like Steve Jobs had a messy desk. And so two pieces of paper kind of came together on his desk where anybody else who would clean their desk, that would never happen. And as a result, he made this connection that was beyond what other people had seen. And that became Apple everything.
Wow.
So there's a lot to be said about the subconscious processing of the mind.
Yeah,
And you got to let it do that.
right. Got to give it the option. All
Yeah.
right, well, a couple more questions, and then I definitely want to hear what you're up to so the listeners can find out more about you and follow you and learn with you. But I mentioned TikTok. I feel like TikTok has like a bad rap, but I also feel like there's this whole other side of TikTok that can be really great for, food recipes. I've been using it for beauty tips. It honestly even motivates me to clean because some people I follow upload all these like cool videos of just being healthy and keeping your space clean. So one of my goals for this year is like hair goals and really just taking care of my brain and my head to get my hair to grow more. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
like massaging my scalp. I've been putting rosemary oil in my hair and letting it sit in there. Does any of that resonate with you? You are the brain guru.
Absolutely. All that sounds amazing. Yeah. I even had a client who was in her 80s and she started to massage her head because uh there's so many great reasons to do that. Not the least of which is your brain bones, the cranial plates come together in things called sutures which look like this and sometimes they get pinched. And so when you massage it, it opens it up for the craniosacral fluid to go in between.
Amazing.
That's
How come
important.
sometimes my head is a little sore?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Partially because of the pressure there. And partially due to the meridians, they're acupoints. And when the energy isn't moving, it will be sore and tender.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But
So this,
she massaged her head so much, her hair started turning to brown from white. And she was actually disturbed and she stopped.
just like I
But she
said,
was like 89 at the time or something. And so that's an extenuating circumstance. But massaging any portion of the body at all can improve the energy of it. And certainly your hair can grow thicker and faster when you massage those areas. And similarly, when you do gua sha facial, right?
yeah,
You
I've been
move
doing
all
that,
these things.
like
Yeah.
trying to have that part of my morning routine is just like the cold rose
Mm,
crystal on my face.
mm,
So many
mm.
crystals that we could probably get into together.
We'll talk
But
about
that's
that next
just
time.
one
We
for
would
the
go
episode.
crazy on crystals.
I know, right? Crazy on crystals. That could also be a podcast. Well,
I have
this,
so many crystals. I go nuts on crystals.
what's your, what are you holding with you this week? What's your crystal vibe?
I have my regular crystals I work with. I like
Enjoy.
labradorite is the
Okay.
labradorite is the healer stone. I normally don't use the word healer for myself, but it's nice to know there's a stone
Yeah.
that has those properties. I keep it in my pocket.
Cool.
And then I really like this stone that I got in Sedona, Arizona, at a place called the Center for the New Age.
I
Um,
went
and
there.
did
Maybe
you
the
go there?
reason
It's
I went
so
there.
cool. I don't know. We weren't together, but we should go though.
Well, I know, but I think maybe I saw or you told me you went there. Maybe that's why I went there. Or maybe it's just a coincidence.
So this red stone that is called cinnabar quartz, it's man-made. Cinnabar is actually poisonous, but when they put it together with quartz, they encapsulate it. And that stone is for a feeling of invincibility. And so
Okay.
when I walk into a
To
room and
your
somebody,
dosha.
right? I know exactly. I often, get clients who have multiple diagnoses who have been down every road and I want to help them. And so this stone helps me feel invincible in that way.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. The stone spell.
Yeah.
So this is also a spiritual podcast. You mentioned earlier in the podcast just talking to your guides. So I was just curious, do you believe in God, higher power, angels? What is it really that you connect with the most?
Definitely my word is God. I grew up in a spiritual household, and so I don't have any issue with that. Um, I also do 12-step programs. I know I just broke on anonymity there, but they've really, really helped me. And
Introduced to it at Marianne Wells Yoga School in my last 100 hours. And I was like, this is amazing. This shouldn't just be something that people with addiction and recovery are using. This is a
yeah,
beautiful practice.
absolutely. So I love those things. And so for me, God is one thing, and then higher power is different. And I really think about like my highest self, which overlaps with God, but not quite the same. I love to think about angels and spirits. I feel like I'm still in touch with my parents, even though they've crossed over, and other awesome family members and friends who have crossed. I get a lot of psychic information. And certainly I feel like I'm working with them. My spirituality is the best part of my life. Um, Interestingly enough, pittas are known for being spiritually extreme.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can
So
see
that's
that.
me for sure. That's
Yeah,
me for sure.
that's a good thing to be extreme about. I feel like
Yeah.
it's saved me over and over again and in some stressful moments and even just having this podcast and having a platform now that I'm doing it for my listeners, but I'm also just very much doing it for myself where we can have these
Yeah.
conversations and share the message and, let people know that they're not alone with like thinking and believing and to keep going and having these conversations is really helpful for people that are looking for a
Yeah.
spiritual voice or feeling.
And I love what you just said. Like, part of the reason I love my spiritual practice is that I'm not alone. I'm not alone at all. Actually, you know what is interesting? They've done enough scientific research now to understand when you meditate, you're not opening up a different area of your brain. But the area right behind your ears, the sensory cortex, which views you different than me, that part gets quiet. And so when you meditate, you're literally connecting with every other growing thing by the fact that that part gets quiet. And I think that that's gorgeous. We are really
It is
connected. It
gorgeous.
is a interconnected universe. Quantum theory is the theory. So that's like kind of the proof. It's great.
Yeah, that's also another amazing fact. So many learnings from Nancy Loedy on this episode. Well, Nancy, what's next? Yeah, we've talked a lot about, you're not a healer. I always think of you that way. So, you have clients, you are becoming more of a teacher. Where can we learn more about you? What's up next? You have a bunch of different workshops and classes coming up. Tell us about that.
Yes, I am so grateful. I have inherited the teaching of crossonology, brain integration, the entire modality. So Susan McCrossan has put her trust in me. Um, just last year, I started to teach almost full time. And uh, in addition, I have my own classes and workshops. And furthermore, I am part of a thing called GEMS College of Energy Medicine with Alexis Costello and Liz Elia, and Hannah Costello and Ezra Costello. So I'm out there teaching all the time. We have so many amazing things going on. Most of them you can see at nancyloedy.com. Maybe if you link it in your description. I'm teaching advanced classes coming up, then pre-bit, which is the very first class. I'm going to be doing a workshop on repairing injuries, which, believe it or not, you can do with this modality. Here's something even better. You can prevent an injury. I would like to go there. And so I'll be
Yeah.
teaching a lot about that this year. And then the regular brain integration courses. Brain integration is designed to get rid of ADD, ADHD, and dyslexia in 12 hours, and it works. So that's the main part, but then everything is on top of that. I also
Right.
have a YouTube channel Kadie's in charge of, and an awesome video called Nancyology, which is the brain integration you can do at home. It can put you if you have trouble falling asleep, that's really where to use it.
Yeah.
But it can also wake you up, put you back to sleep in the middle of the night. So that's just a miracle. So most of that is at nancyloedy.com, although Nancyology has its own website, nancyology.com.
Awesome. I'll share all that in the show notes. Well,
Yeah.
it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. We will have you back. This will be more of a quarterly meeting that you can learn from Nancy. So I appreciate you and your time.
Oh, thank you so much, Kadie.
I'll
I feel
talk
like
to
we
you
could
on
talk for
Friday. We'll bring,
hours.
right? Exactly. I know, right? We just made the cutoff here. But
Yeah.
we'll be talking on Friday because we've got a little special something in the works, working on a yoga retreat. So stay tuned, everyone.
Oh my
Let you
God,
know
that's
as
going to
soon
be
as we have
so
them.
good. It's going to be
Yeah,
so good.
so good. All right. I
I'm
love
really
you.
grateful. Thank you for
Super
inviting me.
grateful for you. Have a good week.
You too, honey. Have a good one.
Bye.